Hello again, my fellow pilots and my fellow aircraft maintenance personnel. Your host is always Haitham Ali, and I'm an aviation technical instructor. Welcome to my aviation nuggets for today. What is the difference, everybody, between pressure altitude, height, and elevation? In this video, we will know the difference between pressure altitude, height, and elevation. All of these terminologies are related to the altimeter. Altimeter. Okay. So what is the altimeter? The altimeter is a pressure reading gauge, or it is a static pressure reading gauge that calibrated to show altitude, or to be specific, that is calibrated to show vertical distance. Again, what is the altimeter? The altimeter is a pressure gauge. The altimeter is a pressure gauge, static pressure reading gauge that calibrated to show us a vertical distance. Is it right to say that calibrated to show us altitude? Yes and no. How yes and no? One of the vertical distances that can be shown by the altimeter is altitude, yes. And the altimeter may show height. And the altimeter may show pressure altitude. So that, to be more specific, we can say that the altimeter is a pressure gauge that calibrated, static pressure gauge that calibrated to show us a vertical distance. This vertical distance, everybody, may be pressure altitude, or what it called the flight level, may be altitude, may be height. It is depend on what? On the altimeter pressure setting, and the isobar. Is the altimeter or altimeter setting is regarding 1013 hectopascal, or mean sea level, or field elevation. To be more specific, is the altimeter setting is QNH or QFE or 1013? Okay, everybody? Okay. So, if the altimeter setting is QNH, the altimeter vertical distance that will be shown is an altitude. Okay, everybody? QNH is the pressure setting related to mean sea level. Like here, the QNH is 990 plus 10 equal 1000 hectopascal. So if you put here the standard pressure setting of the altimeter or altimeter setting at 1000, so it is QNH. So the altimeter will show us altitude, which is 4000 feet, as you can see here. Okay. So what is altitude, everybody? Altitude is the vertical distance of a moving object from the mean sea level. Again, the altitude is the vertical distance of a moving object, like an aeroplane or aircraft from the mean sea level. And you get altitude on the altimeter when the standard pressure setting is QNH. Okay. And what is height, everybody? Height is the vertical distance of a moving object, like an aeroplane or aircraft, from runway or from a field elevation. And if you need the altimeter to show you height, you need to put the altimeter pressure setting at QFE, which is the standard pressure setting related to the field elevation. Here QFE equal 990 hectopascal. So if you put here the standard pressure setting QFE or 990, the altimeter will show us height, which is the vertical distance of the aeroplane from the runway. So it is 3,730 feet. 3,730 feet. So if we put the standard pressure setting QNH, everybody, QNH, and we land on the runway, the altimeter will show us the field elevation of the runway. Here it is the elevation, which is 270 feet. So if the altimeter setting is QNH and we land on the runway, the altimeter will show us the field elevation of the airport or runway. Here QNH at the standard pressure setting of 1000, which is the mean sea level, the altimeter will show us the field elevation, which is 270 feet. And now this is the elevation, everybody. Elevation is the vertical distance of a fixed object like an airport or runway from the mean sea level. Again, elevation is the vertical distance of a fixed point like a runway or a tower from the mean sea level. Here the field elevation of the runway is 270. So if we put on the altimeter QNH, which is the mean sea level isobar 1000 hectopascal, the altimeter will show us on the runway the field elevation. On the other hand, if the altimeter setting is QFE, which is the isobar at the field elevation, which is 990, QFE 990, on the runway the altimeter will show us 0, because the standard pressure setting is QFE. Okay, everybody? QFE. Okay, so what about the 1013 hectopascal? This is regarding, everybody, the altimeter pressure setting that the pilot will put after passing the transition altitude. In that case, the pilots are seeking, most importantly, vertical separation between other traffic. So all the aircraft flying over the transition altitude, they must put the altimeter pressure setting at 1013, which is the pressure altitude. Pressure altitude or flight level is the vertical distance of the moving aircraft from the pressure setting of 1013 hectopascal. So if you put the standard pressure setting at 1013, the altimeter will show us pressure altitude or flight level. Here standard pressure setting at 1013, the altimeter show us 4,400. So again, the aircraft, as you can see here, it's flying in a level flight. But if QFE is the standard pressure setting, altimeter will show us 3,730. If it is QNH, 4,000. Okay? If it is flight level pressure altitude, 4,400. 4,400, everybody. So again, the altimeter is not only for altitude. The altimeter not show only the altitude. The altimeter may show us altitude, pressure altitude or flight level, or may show us height. Pressure altitude or flight level, altitude and height, it is a vertical distance between a moving aircraft and mean sea level or 1013 or field elevation. Height between aircraft and the field elevation. Altitude between aircraft and the mean sea level. Pressure altitude between aircraft and between 1013 hectopascal. 1013 hectopascal. Okay. Normally, the training pilots on a general aviation aeroplane put the standard pressure setting QFE, because on landing and touchdown on the runway, they need the altimeter to show them 0. But regarding the modern sophisticated airliner, there is a transition between the pressure setting. In the area of the airport, pilot may put QFE. In a larger circle or the area around the airport, approach and landing, okay, they put the pressure setting QNH. But if the aeroplane passes the transition altitude, they put the pressure setting which is 1013. Okay, everybody? Okay. So this was the difference between pressure, altitude or flight level, altitude, height, and elevation. Pressure, altitude and height related to a moving object like the aeroplane. And the elevation is the vertical distance between a fixed point like a runway from the mean sea level. Okay, everybody, thank you always for your good listening. And always fly safely and maintain your aircraft very safely. From Cairo, Egypt, your host was Haytham Ali, and I'm an aviation technical instructor. Please stay tuned for an upcoming sessions like this. And please don't hesitate to comment and share your knowledge with a comment in this video. Thank you and goodbye.